He's got a background as a professional football player that had his own battle with inflammation.
First game of the year, first preseason game of the year, broke my jaw in the first play, opening kickoff of the second half. Broke it in two places, actually. Doctors kept trying to blame it on my previous football career, and I'm like, I didn't play that much football. My orthopedic surgeon at Rothman, he prescribed one joint replacement. You're gonna have to get all four of the joints replaced by the time when you turn 50.
Friction that was with the fascia, and it was breaking the bond, which was impacting the nerve cells.
Because I thought Netflix was going to heal me, actually made me worse.
Hello, I'm Brian Rose, the founder of Biohackers United. And today I'm doing a podcast with Dan Esposito. And this is a great podcast because I've been talking to people at the gym and telling them about Dan's experience, and they're just excited to hear about his story and his expertise. But he's got a background as a professional football player that had his own battle with inflammation, that he took a deeper dive into ways to heal his own body. And not only that, he launched a supplement, not only to help himself, but to help others with chronic pain and inflammation. So I really want to learn more about Dan and introduce him, and then let him have an opportunity to talk about his background, especially where he was coming from as a football player.
Yeah, so I always like, when I tell my story, I like to go back to when I was a child. As a child, because I think a lot of people with chronic pain, they deal with a lot of childhood trauma. I think a lot of people like to blame their childhood trauma on their current chronic pain. While there's some correlation there, I don't really think it completely applies. I believe it's more food patterns that we get in age, and we kind of look back, what could it be? And we just land on something because we don't realize our food is causing most of our chronic pain. But as a child, my mother was married 3 times. I had 2 very abusive stepfathers. I moved around a lot. I was in 5 elementary schools. So as a child, I think first grade, I won like the first grade, sports Olympics for my school. And I made friends. And so then I realized, I make friends through being really good at sports and athletic. And so I just became a very, kind of hinged my personality on being athletic, not really related to one sport. But one middle school, 3 high schools later, I end up walking on to Millersville University to play football there, and decided to walk on to track the next season, the next year as well. And so, only playing 1 year of high school football, I didn't really have a lot of knowledge or experience playing football. So my first couple years, you could see I was kind of talented, but I didn't know where I was going. I fumbled a lot, had, issues holding on to the ball, but, I could play. And then by my junior year, I earned the starting spot. And then 3 days later, the day of the first football game, I went from being the starter to being the 3rd string guy and getting almost no carries that year because I was a walk-on. The other guys were scholarship guys. I was like, all right, well, that's my role now. So going into my senior year, second game of the year, first game, our running backs didn't get any yards. Second game, our running backs weren't getting any yards. And then they finally put me in, and then I had 150 something yards in the first, that half of that game. The next game I started, I was offensive player of the nation for Division II, had 300 and something yards all purpose. And then the scouts started coming around, and, I got fortunate enough that the Redskins invited me to rookie minicamp without a contract. I got a contract when I was there, came back, was doing really well. First game of the year, first preseason game of the year, broke my jaw in the first play. On the opening kickoff of the second half. Broke it in 2 places, actually. Played the rest of the game with a broken jaw. Didn't tell the coaches until the very end of the game. And I was like, I don't think I can go back in because, my face was out to here. Anyway, they gave me an injury settlement, unfortunately. And, I went away, healed up, and this kind of started the beginning of like my bad health journey. Moved in with a couple buddies that year. They used to go to McDonald's all the time, and late night they were DJs at a nightclub, and those were my roommates. And so, but an interesting thing, I was dating a girl at the time, and we went to a pizza place, and I went to one of those bubblegum machines, and in the bubblegum machine, it had all the helmets. And I said, next team that comes out of this is the team I'm going to play for next. And the Saints come out. The Saints. So once again, I have a very spiritual connection to this entire journey, which is weird. 2 weeks later, my agent calls me and tells me the Saints want to work me out. So I signed with the Saints, right? Broke my jaw with them. I got punched in practice by a linebacker that I was just one-on-one drills. I was just destroying the guy. And one day he got frustrated and sucker punched me in practice. Broke it again in the same place. They cut me, brought me back. I was there for about 5 weeks of the regular season. And then at that point, the shoulder, my shoulder had been hurting for years now. It just, I couldn't do anything with it. And of course, I'm like last guy invited to the team. So it's like, I don't want to tell anybody that this stuff is going on. And so, but I wasn't performing and got released. And then that was kind of the end. That was basically the end of my football career. The XFL called and I played a little semi-pro just for fun. But that was my football career. But the interesting thing is that I didn't really identify as a football player because I had such a short career, and I didn't play much growing up. I just identified as somebody that could move. So after my football career, going out and hanging out with those same friends, in the nightclubs, I'm a really good dancer, right? That was like my secret power, my secret weapon. So as a child, sports and then movement and dance and then I lost both of those abilities over time. And, as these things were going, my body was going south, the doctors kept trying to blame it on my previous football career. And I'm like, I didn't play that much football. Something's not adding up here. There's guys that have played way more football than me that are in much, much better shape than me. I mean, my chiropractor who diagnosed me with fibromyalgia said they've never seen anyone as stiff as me. And my orthopedic surgeon at Rothman, he prescribed one joint replacement and then not physically wrote them down, but said, you're going to have to get all 4 of the joints replaced by the time, like when you turn 50. So I have the one actual prescription for it, along with, the degenerative arthritis. And then, so at that point, and I said to him, I said, hey, what's going on in there? Like, what's wrong with me?
Right.
You went in there, you should be able to see it. He goes, oh, your muscles are just tangled. And so, it's a misdirection. And I don't think he meant it. I just don't think he had, or maybe he didn't think I could understand what was really going on in there, or maybe
Right.
he didn't want me to know what was going on there. Who knows? But anyway, so for the next couple of years, as my body got worse and worse and worse, I just would imagine myself just peeling my skin back and then just realigning my muscle fibers. I would have visions about that. And so, I just became obsessed over like, what's going on with me? Like, I shouldn't feel this way. Like, I'm a really great athlete. I've always been super, super flexible. Everyone in my family is pretty athletic. My mother did have fibromyalgia, so you can blame it on genetics, but I know it was the soda. And
Sure.
so, I, a couple more surgeries later and, blah, blah, blah. I was at the gym. I was 265 pounds. My lymphatic system had stopped working. I didn't realize this, but I was puffy everywhere from the inflammation because your body's constantly creating lymph
Mhm.
from that repair process. And so I'm 265 pounds. I got a beard down to here. I mean, I looked cool, but I could barely turn myself. My knees were the size of golf balls. I mean, they were swollen. I mean, not softballs. They were just swollen for like 8 months. And so I was like, my son was 3 months before he was going to be born. I'm 53. He's 8 now. So I'm an older father. And I was like, I got to fix this. I just set out to the universe, like, I'm going to figure this out. So fortunately, a couple weeks later, I go to a networking event and I'm limping around, heavy with my knees. And a friend says, why are you limping? And I said, my knees have been swollen for 8 months. I can't get them to go down. She goes, well, why don't you rub some castor oil on them? And I was like, oh, Lord, come on. I was not into this stuff at all. Like, I
Mhm.
didn't believe. I grew up in football and sports, and it's orthopedic surgeons and doctors, and that's it. You think that's the path. And so, and at the time, people were doing this multi-level marketing for essential oils. So I thought she was going to try
Yep.
to like rope me into something, which I actually believe in essential oils now too. But anyway, so it's funny how you shift. But so I'm like, all right. And I had just started foam rolling and I knew something was going on with my foam
Mhm.
rolling. Telling people, you got to foam roll, you got to foam roll, something about foam rolling. She's saying this to me about castor oil. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go get this castor oil and just rub it on my knees, rub it on my, lymph areas. Now, I still didn't know that it was my lymphatic system that was causing all this puffiness. It was, whatever. And so I left it on overnight, put about a shot glass worth all over my body, left it on overnight. The next day, the swelling in my knees was completely gone. I mean, it was 8 months, and I could, like, me walking down a flight of stairs looked like an 80-year-old man walking down a flight of stairs. Went completely gone. Then all of a sudden, I just kept blowing stuff out of my face for like 3 days. It just kept coming and coming and coming. And so now this big fat face that I had and all this stuff that was hiding like my muscle, definition went away. And I looked like the normal person. And instead of having maybe one good clear head day a month, I was now getting about 15 clear head days a month. So I was like, I asked the universe, they delivered this person to me, and I started this healing process. And so a couple months later, I went and had a beer after my son was born at a Phillies game. We went to a Phillies game with friends. I felt worse after drinking this beer. I'm not a big drinker at all. And I said, well, beer's acidic. Maybe I'm acidic. So I went and got some really good water and started drinking that really good water. And that immediately gave me a better feeling, which led me to a place like people are going to come here. It led me to a podcast that's really sparked the entire journey. It was Dr. Mercola and Zach Bush. And they were talking about hydration, because I was looking for something to educate me on proper hydration, because something happened there. So I needed to learn about it. So what they were talking about was hydration at the cellular level. Like, what water you bring into the cell is dependent on how healthy that cell is going to be and how it's going to perform. And I thought, well, if cells make up the entire body, if I just start making cells healthier and stop worrying about the rest of everything, then will I get healthier? It was a concept that I had. And when we come back to inflammation, you'll see how right on I was. But so, because it shifted from the cellular piece to what is actually causing the pain, which are these proteins and junk. And so I shifted all my kind of research to that. But what happened was, the next thing they were talking about was near range infrared light therapy. So I went and I did a couple practices there, and I would notice that I would walk away and I'd hear a click, which I later realized was probably one of these chemical bonds of a protein breaking, because the photon energy from the light adds an electron to the protein and causes it to split, right? That's why the sun heals you. That's why certain light therapies can heal you. It's an energy response that's causing an electron donation to the thing that it's breaking apart. So, and I was like, well, it's such a slight thing, and I'm paying $30 a month. I might as well go buy myself a near range infrared light. So now I sleep under one pretty much all night. But at that point, it was like, well, I knew that near range infrared therapy helped the mitochondria of the cells be more efficient. So that's why I did it. I didn't know this other thing would happen, right? So I was like, now this is shifting me into a different direction. The next podcast was in this series was on oxalates, oxalic acid. A lady named Sally Norton, who everyone should follow. And she, and it looked to me, and I would sleep next to my son's bed at night because he couldn't sleep. I would listen to a podcast and hold his hand, and we'd sleep. And so, he kind of forced me to heal as well through that. But I looked at this podcast and I was like, I'm not going to listen to this one. And something told me I needed to listen to it, because it didn't seem like it was speaking to me. I was like, this is some biochemistry that I'll never understand or never learn. But what it turns out is I had been acupuncturing myself, dry needling myself, because I did a vitamin B shot once, and I hit a big, thick, lumpy muscle. It was like one of the first things that I did in this process. And it released my sciatica immediately. And I'd been dealing with it for like 4 years. So I put that vitamin B shot here. The needle shook like crazy. I was like, oh no, it's the first time I ever injected myself with anything. I was always a natural athlete. And I was like, oh, what did I do wrong? And then it just allowed the fascia to open up that was pressing against those pain. They're really pain receptors. You call it the sciatica nerve, but there's pain receptors along it. It's the pain receptors. It's taking the pressure off those pain receptors now, so that signal stops going to your brain so intensely. So anyway, so I had been acupuncturing myself, and like, what is that? Like, what is that thing that's on my bone? Like, it's like a growth off the bone, because let me tell you what oxalic acid is. Oxalic acid is a plant defense chemical in spinach, in beets, Swiss chard, almonds. If you make them, juice them up, chocolate, a couple other things, but really spinach, beets, and Swiss chard is really where you want to look. And so I was juicing spinach and beets and things like that when my lymphatic system issue was happening. And so this practice of trying to make myself healthier because I thought Netflix was going to heal me actually made me worse. So I felt better right away. But because these plant defense chemicals have been juiced, they're now nanoparticles that are free to leak out through your gut. And they build, they're called oxalates all throughout the soft tissue. They're basically, and so if you looked on my Instagram, I have one coming out of my chest about a year or so ago, 2 years ago. It took about 2 weeks to come through. It felt like a razor blade coming out. There's a cleanse that you can do for it. And when it finally came out, I mean, it was literally a hard, like pumice stone. And so, everybody's doing this beet root powder for like, better blood flow. It's terrible for you. It's going to destroy you with the oxalates, because those oxalates are now going to build up all throughout your soft tissue. Sorry, my son might be coming through here. Shush. I have 2 chihuahuas too. So sorry. So anyway, so I would come across these things because they're looking for calcium. So they're going to sit on your bone, but they tear you up inside. Women who have hysterectomies, a lot of times they're due to the oxalates in the groin region. So Sally has this really great cleanse that I included a version of it in the undo method that tells you how to basically juice a bunch of lemons, drink it with some binders, and then they come out through your skin. It's wild. It's like I laid on the beach the first time I did it. I had all of these things just start coming through, and they won't come out right away because they're like, like Superman's crystal cavern. And, my partner, she's an esthetician, so she's trying to pull them out because she's all, obsessed with that kind of stuff. She couldn't get them out. They just have to naturally get forced out through the skin. And so the first time I did it, I had all this muscle twitching and new muscle movement and like life coming back into and I thought I had it on the first shot. I'm like, oh, cool. And then I realized about 6 months later, I should maybe do another one. I don't, maybe I didn't get it all. And I did it again, and still more stuff came out. And I've probably done about 6 or 7 of them over the last couple of years. And almost every time I'm getting, I think one time I didn't get a reaction, but you get these oxalates out. In an autopsy study, it said that 90% of people have them in there. And so, yeah. And especially with everybody going to the gym, you're doing your spinach smoothie at the gym, spinach smoothie from Whole Foods.
Were you just squeezing lemons and creating lemon juice itself and then taking a separate binder? What was the protocol?
Yeah, I have a juicer. So I use a juicer. So I'll get 5 bags of lemons, and put it into a big thing. And I might do a little bit of water, but it's really the citric acid, the natural citric acid. Malic acid can do it. Tartaric acid can do it. I think caffeic acid can do it. But it's an electrostatic interaction that's holding this oxalate together. It's another energy shift, right? It's all about energy. You're an energy healer. Everything's energy, man. So it's breaking that through that electrostatic interaction, which causes pieces of it to come out. Calcium citrate, because it's looking for calcium, will now bind to it. And then your body will naturally take it out in, probably a multitude of ways. The only place I noticed was through my skin. So, but you also, because you'll get some dumping, like it can pull stuff out of your cells. You get some kind of cellular dumping. So you want to make sure you also include potassium citrate and magnesium citrate to restore whatever is going to be dumping. But, you take that over like 5 days. The next 5 days, you drink it. Might cause a little stomach upset. You got to watch that histamine response, that little anxiety that might happen. But it's really effective and it's natural. And the only other option that doctors have is let's just go cut them out. And if they do, they're not going to get them all. Then what are they going to do? Cause inflammation, which can cause scar tissue. And that's going to cause further problems. And then eventually they're going to give you a hysterectomy.
It's absolutely affordable too.
Yeah. Super cheap. Yeah.
So you went from doing castor oil almost like packs to reduce the joint inflammation, and then you moved on
the castor oil cleaned out the lymphatic system.
True, right?
Yeah, so that's what that did. I know that it has an impact on inflammation. I don't use it that much on inflammation because castor oil can be a little aggressive with your body's response to it if you do too much of it. So I cycle it just like everything else. Like today, I put it on before I went into the sauna. I put a little bit on, so I'm like managing whatever lymphatic issue might be happening by applying it every so often. But you shouldn't have to do it more than once or twice to get a pretty big reaction if you've got a lot of, lymph hanging around in your body.
So after that, you just took a deeper dive into inflammation and ways as far as creating your product flexibility fuel to
Yeah.
help with the joints and the inflammation itself. Was it just like a transgression as far as the research that you were doing into
Yeah.
reducing all the inflammation?
Yeah, so I wanted to so you come across these things because I'm in this fibromyalgia algorithm now, or chronic pain algorithm. So you've got all these people claiming to say, this is the reason for fibromyalgia, and this is the reason for fibromyalgia. It's the reason. The reality is like they're all part of the reasons for fibromyalgia. So I kept. Sorry, my dog is having a moment. So and so really what it is what's physically causing the pain is what I became obsessed with. Like, what conditions in the body cause the pain? So I broke it down to inflammation, which creates the fibrin.
Mhm.
Before inflammation, I was really focusing on collagen. It's equally as important, but I didn't even know about
Mhm.
fibrosis until a couple years ago. It was like just a missing piece in the whole thing. So I was really focused on glycation and collagen and those type of things. But it's inflammation, which leaves behind the fibrin, poor collagen, glycation, oxidative stress, oxidation, calcification, and then just dehydration and poor nutrition. Those
Mhm.
are the major causes of stiffness and chronic pain, right? And then so you start understanding, okay, well, what holds these things together? Right? Like, what type of chemical bonds are holding these
Mhm.
things together? It's like, okay, well, this one has 4. Which one's most prevalent? Well, here they are in order. This one's just electrostatic interaction. Well, this one only has 1 chemical bond holding it together. Well, then what type of reaction do I need to create to cause an electron donation from a supplement to break the chemical bond of the pain
Oh.
maker, the offender, so the body can now start sanding it off. The mechanoreceptors and other ways the body will heal has taken that thing that science or medicine will tell you is insoluble. Well, now you've made it soluble with the electron donation by splitting it. Now the
Mm.
body takes a very measured approach at degrading these things and healing you. Like, it's now you're healing yourself and taking them out through the interstitium, the interstitial fluid, the lymphatic system, etc. So that's why you need all those things to be cleared out. And that's why I talk about the cleanses and proper hydration, because when you break this stuff down, got to have a path for the body to get rid of it, or you're going to feel sicker.
So it almost sounds like you took the same mechanism of action from juicing lemons and the ability to break the bond, but then you applied it to the collagen, the
Yeah,
fascia, and then you looked at glycation as far as glycation impacting the fascia itself.
yeah,
Could you talk more about it? I believe like glycation from sugar or fructose can stiffen the fascia.
yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, and it's mainly happens in the blood vessels, so you really gum up your blood vessels with glycation events as well. But so
Mhm.
glycation is an event where you have a sugar molecule that interacts with a protein or a fat, right? So if we eat something with sugar, this event is going to happen. I mean, it's pretty bad, but I don't tell everyone, just completely get rid of sugar. It's just not
Mhm.
real. You just manage how you're doing it, and then now you know how to undo it, right? With certain supplements. But what happens is now that fascia that's been built incorrectly anyway, because if you're listening now and you're taking a collagen supplement, if you don't have vitamin C, manganese, zinc, and copper, that collagen will not be built correctly. So now you're putting glycation on top of poorly built collagen, and now the collagen, which is supposed to be like goo, like kind of a bouncy, rubbery goo that provides support, is now like a fishnet that doesn't go anywhere. It's stiffened like
Mhm.
I don't know, like a net you would trap an animal in. And so that's trapping your muscles in place. And then, so we talked about how swine, pork, certain foods using an air fryer,
Uh-huh.
high fructose corn syrup has a 10 times the effect than sugar, all causes this event called glycation. And it's prevalent in all of our food. And we talked about pork, and so your body can handle 15,000 advanced glycation end products, AGEs. It's what's left after the event. The event happens, it leaves the AGE. 15,000 your body can get rid of, theoretically, if you're healthy. 3 strips of bacon is 90,000. So we're talking about if you've gone on a keto diet
Mhm.
for 6 months, 3 months, you've caused all this glycation in your body and in your bloodstream. That's now causing oxidative stress, which is now gonna cause an inflammation response, which is now gonna cause poor collagen support, right? And it becomes this cycle that we don't know is hidden in these sort of fad diets or health foods like spinach, juicing spinach. Spinach eating is fine. Um, and then we think we're being healthy, but we're still getting poor results from these things. And it's like, hey, just because this thing does this one thing doesn't mean it's not doing the other thing as well. Just because spinach has iron in it, which is not even usable by the human body, doesn't mean that it's not also trying to kill you because the plant wants to survive. So I just shed a light on the most common causes of chronic pain. And the chronic pain is actually coming from a pain receptor. I think that's what everyone should know as well. Pain
Mhm.
comes from a thing called a nociceptor. It's a pain receptor that sends signals to your brain, then you experience pain in your brain. From the area in the body, like you process where it is in the body. And so the concept is like, let's get that hardened, glycation, inflamed, bad collagen tissue from pushing against this pain receptor so much and then that signal goes away. Brian, when those signals go away, I've had thousands and thousands of them because there's pain receptors all over your body. It happens almost on a daily basis. It's like the angels come out of the sky and the chorus sings in the background. You just feel a freedom of something in your brain that just lightens the load like tremendously. So the old adage that, fibromyalgia is just a central nervous system processing disorder, it's
Mhm.
processing perfectly. I guarantee it. You've got something there that's causing it to to keep processing. It's
Mhm.
working in the way. It's God's alert system to tell you that, hey, you need to clean this out. But because 75% of the American diet is highly processed foods, every time we put that in our mouth, it's inflammation. I don't care if it's labeled health food or not. A processed food is going to cause inflammation. The only way to naturally break down the inflammation fibrin is at 20 hours of fasting, or if you have certain enzymes in your body that you're taking with a supplement like mine, they're going to go look for these fibrins, donate the electron to it, and then cause it to break. So the way that I found out about that, I want to tell this story because I think it's pretty amazing. My other business is in energy as well. I'm a commercial energy broker. We broker electricity and gas, and I was at an event that Shell was putting on for their top brokers, and it was a big golf event up in the Ozarks, and everybody got food poisoning. And this is when I learned about fibrosis and really started learning about fibrosis. So everybody got food poisoning. So I thought to myself, well, what gave everyone food poisoning? And I thought, was it the pineapple? And so I was like, why did I think of pineapple? Like, okay, pineapple contains bromelain. I was like, I don't even know what bromelain is. It's like I've plugged in to the ether and I'm
Right?
open for this information. You know what I mean? So it's giving
Mhm.
it to me, right? You can call an angel God, an openness to the experience, whatever it is. I got that from somewhere that wasn't from me. And I'm like, all right, well, what's bromelain? And bromelain is used as a commercial meat tenderizer. The mechanism of action is this. And I was like, I had a tear come out of my eye. A commercial meat tenderizer. Well, pretend I'm a cow. I want I want to be more tender. And so you start realizing, oh, all the fibrosis in animals is managed with bromelain. And
Oh.
that's in my supplement. It's the proteolytic enzyme that's in the pineapple powder. So it's the same deal. So
Oh.
if I didn't qualify for the event, if I wasn't in the energy business, if they didn't serve pineapple, if we all didn't get food poisoning, I would have never come across this. You know what I mean? And it was just a very unique gift that I got. And I've had more other ways that things have just I was given the right questions to ask. And people say God works through you, but I also think maybe it's not that. Maybe you just open yourself up, and I
Yes.
think that is
Yeah.
really, what meditation does to you because it's obvious we know that 99% of everything in the universe is made of plasma, right?
Mhm.
Is
Mhm.
right, and plasma is energy, and conscious plasma is a thing. It's like so.
Yeah.
something's here, something's giving me information, and whatever that is, that's like been my latest search.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the awareness that we have the connection to the divine light or the Akashic records or the ethereal plane. And it's once you're aware of it and you recognize it and then you're receptive, because we basically will get ideas that we might perhaps perceive as not of our own, and those spark interest. But going back to what you were talking about with the friction that was with the fascia, and it was breaking the bond, which was impacting the nerve cells, causing that pain and inflammation. So you created the flexibility fuel itself. I've been taking it, and what I noticed is I felt hydrated. I felt the flavor, it absolutely tastes good. I mean, I enjoy just sipping on it.
Thank you.
But what are some of the additional ingredients that you mentioned besides the bromelain from the
Yeah,
pineapple?
yeah.
What's yeah.
So everything in there is functional, right? Except for some of the flavoring, because it's some gritty stuff if you don't make it taste good. So nobody would take it. So, but essentially, it's an essential amino acid based supplement at its core to make it more commercially sort of viable. But there's 4 categories of things that are essential: essential nutrients, essential amino acids, essential minerals, and essential fats. You have to hit all 4 of those categories before you start looking at anything else, right? Honestly, give yourself the raw ingredients so it can do what it does. So we've got the essential amino acids right there in your flexibility fuel. But on top of that, so we'll talk about inflammation. So the pineapple powder is designed in there, is intended to help the body break down that fibrin. Rutin, which is a polyflavonoid, is the most effective polyflavonoid to fight glycation, right? So, and it's got a bunch of other benefits. If somebody wanted to add something, I add my quercetin to it, which is another really great polyflavonoid that also manages histamine, but that's not in my supplement. I stack it. Then so you talk about hydration, there's hyaluronic acid. So hyaluronic acid holds on to 8,000 times its weight in water. So your hydration potential is increased. So your collagen needs proper hydration to glide smoothly. Every single muscle fiber in your body is wrapped in collagen: endomysium, paramysium, epimysium. All this collagen that gets stiff that you want to break down. So then there's benfotiamine, which helps to kind of downstream creates a better process of creating a protein that coats the nerve endings so they're not so sensitive. And then there's where's my thing here? My brain is losing it. Oh, B propolis. That's the big one that I was talking about earlier. So B propolis, obviously. So that's the one that helps resynthesize collagen, right? So what that's doing is helping collagen break back down because you've got all this poorly built collagen, and then your body's naturally going to uptake the good ingredients and get rid of the bad stuff. So, yeah, I don't think I'm missing anything here. Glycation, malic acid, which is actually one of the sweeteners, but that helps break down the electrostatic interaction of the oxalate. So that's like an added benefit to it. So these are the pain makers. So when you look at those pain makers and how they affect the body and how they affect the soft tissue, if you can slowly start degrading them, I think being the most common set of problems, I think, and everyone said, hey, I've tried so many things. Like, I know you haven't tried something like flexibility fuel. And once you don't even have to buy it from me. Like, if you go on my website and just find the ingredients on Amazon, go make your own flexibility fuel. I'm fine with it. I just want people to heal. But I've made it very, very easy and it tastes good. But the rutin, the benfotiamine, PEA.
Yeah.
Super, super good because so we talked about inflammation starts at the cell wall and then it starts that cytokine release. PEA manages that cytokine release so that initial inflammation process doesn't go so crazy, right? So it helps the body kind of modulate that. But we definitely want to talk about the cell wall at some point once we, if you have any more questions about the flexibility fuel, I definitely want to let people know about how that cell wall should be made of a membrane ratio.
Absolutely. Why don't we go ahead and
Yeah,
take a dive into the cellular
yeah.
wall and yeah, how it's
Yeah, so
connected.
I kind of little all over the place because I mean I like my supplement. I want people to buy it, and I get weird talking about it because I don't want to be like a
Oh,
blocking
it's great.
supplements, but I want to educate. So what I've recently found out as I really started getting into, because there's the 4 categories of essentials, and I never really looked at fats, and so I started taking a real deep dive into the fats. And then with ChatGPT or I use Gemini, whatever, you really can start digging down into some of these things much quicker than I was able to the last couple of years. So then you start asking it, well, how does this impact chronic pain? How does this impact inflammation? How does it impact all these other things that might happen in the body? And so what I found was that your uh, layer that surrounds the cell should be a ratio of sorry. Can we pause for a second? I really need a drink. Yeah, sorry,
Sure.
man. Okay, so sorry. So what I was talking about was that what I was really interested in is like where does inflammation start? And then when you start looking at the cell, is it's where all inflammation originates from. Because whenever that cell is attacked, and if you remember at the beginning of my journey, I was like, well, let's just look at the cells. I shifted to the junk, and then I came back to the cell here. So the cell wall must be comprised of a layer of an outer layer of the membrane of omega 3 to omega 6s on a 1-to-1 ratio, right? 4-to-1 omega 6 to omega 3 is okay. But once you start getting higher than that, the inflammation response becomes more pronounced because the omega 6 acts more highly inflammatory to a stress signal than the omega 3. And the average American has a 15-to-1 membrane of omega 6 to omega 3s. So that means if I eat a slice of pizza and I've got a 1-to-1 ratio, and someone else eats a slice of pizza with a much higher 6-to-3 ratio, their inflammation response is going to be, however many times greater, exponentially greater than my inflammation response, which is going to make sure that all those other pain makers don't start acting up as well and attacking tissue and doing all that stuff that is a side effect of this sort of healing process.
So that goes back to the fundamental diet itself. And then looking at that ratio of omega 6 to omega 3. And then once you discover that ratio, then you can adjust the diet accordingly to reduce the inflammation.
Yeah, so there's a way you can test it. Now I'm like literally a couple months into this part of my research,
Mhm.
so I'm not familiar with the name of the test, but there is a specific test. But what I've been doing is, obviously you just want to get as many omega 6s out of your diet as possible because they're
Okay.
so prevalent in the American food system. I mean, every manufactured food pretty much has is some type of seed oil, which is high in linoleic acid, which is
Okay.
omega 6s. And even I was at Whole Foods the other day getting like artichoke and olives and things like that, and it's all drenched in sunflower oil and safflower oil, and there's only like 2
Ah,
containers that don't have it, so you gotta skip through, and I really want these types of olives, but they've drowned them in, basically, omega-6 seed oils, and, even in the chicken that we eat from the store, because the chicken's eating grain and corn, about 30% of their tissue is linoleic acid.
really?
So, yeah, it's pretty wild. So I order my food from Wild Pastures in Wild Alaska. I make sure I get the good stuff.
Ah,
And I'll eat, chicken wings when I go out, and I know it's not great, but, like, I'm managing it, right? But the thing is now I'm adding more omega-3s into my diet to get that ratio. So start lessening your omega-6s, add more omega-3s. Cod liver oil is a really great supplement. Salmon, obviously, you want to get wild caught salmon. You want to eat the
mhm.
skin because that's where most of the omega 3s are, is in the skin. Or just some supplementation. But the cod liver oil, you got to make sure you only do it twice a week because there's a lot of vitamin A. It can become toxic to the liver. But yeah, so you just start working at that ratio, and on average, it'll take you about 6 months to a year to get the ratio back down. But what you'll notice, like I noticed right away, I could feel that sort of fire inside of me slowing down. That tingle that you get, that inflammation response. That if you're really listening, you know what it is, and so it's not as prevalent. And then neuroinflammation, right? Your cells in your brain are all
Mhm.
made up of the same, membrane ratio. So when you have a little inflammatory response in your brain, it's going to be so much more pronounced, and it's just going to cause all sorts of anxiety and panic and brain fog and, stuff that comes along with neuroinflammation.
One thing you mentioned when it's reducing inflammation, and we've talked about fasting on just previously offline, but another way I think people can realize when they've had a reduction in inflammation, and even when they're fasting, is you'll have an increase uh eyesight. You'll have a greater field of vision. And you might notice it when you're at the gym or you look outside. The other key factor that people can actually realize and sense is you'll have an increased sense of smell. In one of the factors that occurs as you get older and you start to have Alzheimer's or dementia is the reduction in the ability to smell.
Huh.
So when you've cleared the inflammation, and specifically when you're fasting, your sense of smell will be heightened to the point where someone will just walk past you and you will literally smell them. You'll walk past flowers, and then all of a sudden you'll pick up on the fragrance. It's you'll Trust me, if especially if you've been fasting, the next time you're around other people or even outside, you can notice the increased sense of smell and
Yeah.
visual eyesight, because you'll be able to see greater colors.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. When I fast, I can breathe through my nose better. I have a problem breathing through my nose, and in
Mhm.
part of the undo method, the playbook, I talk about why it's so important for chronic pain to breathe through your nose. So
Mhm.
smelling, I don't smell hardly ever. Like, it's like,
Oh,
honestly, like, I know, like, you're talking about this, I'm like, gosh, I remember when I could smell. My sons have amazing
uh-huh.
sensitivity of smell. My son today is like, "Dad, I can hear them cooking I can smell them cooking my shrimp at the restaurant we were at earlier
Yeah.
today." I was like, "Wow, that's crazy." But when you breathe through your nose, and I remember as a child when I was in 1st grade, my doctor asked me, "Dan, do you breathe through your nose or through your mouth?" And it stuck with me forever. And so what I learned is that when you breathe through your nose, your body takes L-arginine and turns it into nitric oxide, which is that thing we're trying to get from beetroot powder. So here's the natural way to make it happen. So it turns it into nitric oxide. So nitric oxide keeps the chemical bonds of the fibrin from forming, right? So if you're constantly breathing through your nose, you're constantly managing that inflammation process. When you stop breathing through your nose, like someone like me, inflammation is going to have a greater impact. So, like, I wear those, the nasal strips, the intake
Mhm.
nasal strips, and unfortunately, I use a lot of nasal spray, which I know isn't great, but I also know I got to breathe through my nose, and it's like, so you got to choose which poison you want to consume. But that's so like that lesson is like one of the things I teach in the method. So now people who maybe don't breathe through their nose are like, "Oh, I'm gonna breathe through my nose." And so we've been sitting here, and I get excited, so I'm breathing heavy, but so we sit here usually, and we don't breathe deeply. And we've sat around for 7 or 8 hours, so it also teaches you gotta take some time during the day to really breathe deeply, because you're circulating blood. We're only breathing deeply enough to support our muscle movement right now,
Right.
and we're not moving our muscles. So our fascia, our collagen is saying, "Oh, you don't want to move. Well, I'm going to create a body that stays in this position then." You remember when we used to sit on the phone,
Mhm.
how
Yeah.
quickly we would stiffen? Well,
Mhm.
that's your body is saying, "Oh, you want to stay over here? I'm going to support you over here." And then you got to break through those chemical bonds of that collagen that's forming, because those chemical bonds, once they're set in, are 7 times stronger than steel. So your chiropractor is not going to work through them. And that's why you can never get it. You know what I mean? You're stretching, you're moving it, but you're never getting it. You need that adjunct, that thing to, make it come apart. And then after a while, your body's going to, hopefully work with it enough to get it to get it to move. And so that's why I think, like, for chiropractors, you used to have this very competitive outlook on life, as you probably could tell. It was my whole life. And I was like, chiropractors are, so the chiropractors are great if they're doing it properly, right? But I used to think I spent so much money on chiropractors and they're all well intentioned. But if they used something like flexibility fuel in their practice, I think they'd have much greater results. And so there's a jockey, she's an ex-professional jockey who fell off her horse, really, really bad shape. She's down in Florida. I met her when I was running at the World Championships last year down in Gainesville. And, of course, I'm going to talk to her because I'm like, what's going on? Like, I need to help you. And so she started taking my flexibility fuel, and I talked to her. She ordered her second bottle, which is great. Her and her husband, they're both, horse riders. And I said, how's it going? She goes, well, I don't know. And a lot of people, like, they don't know because they don't know what they're listening to. And then she got on later on. She goes, my chiropractor's been able to get some real movement, lately. I'm like, yeah, because you're taking my flexibility fuel. It's helping do that thing. So, I had a buddy of mine, and these are anecdotal stories about it. And,
Wow.
I just think it's interesting. Some people are like within a day, they're like, holy cow. Some people a couple weeks later, they're like, oh, this is working. Some people don't realize that it's worked because once the pain goes away, you're not reminded of it anymore. So I called a buddy of mine. He had a shoulder stiffness, nothing crazy, no widespread pain. And I was thankful that he bought it. I didn't think he needed it because he's a pretty flexible guy anyway. And so I called him up expecting not to, you know, have any good news. And he didn't think it worked either. But as he reached for the phone, he thought, oh, I didn't talk to Espo about his supplement. He goes, oh, my shoulder pain's gone. Like he didn't even know as he was reaching for his phone. I told that story to my chapter president of the NFLPA for our Christmas dinner. He goes, dude, you know what? I just realized that last night I had my arm around my girl all night and I didn't have to roll over because that burning pain that, you have, it just disappeared on him. And he didn't realize that now, I'm not saying my supplement does that because I can't, but that happened to him during the same time he was taking the supplement. But so, yeah, I'm very proud of it.
It's amazing. I would think that you could actually apply it because you're running on a national level as a sprinter. Not only could you sense that increase in flexibility, but one of the things with sprinting, and I mean, this is if you're stiff and you have really tight fascia, if you're not flexible, you're going to pull a muscle.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So,
that happened to me at the Worlds last year because I still have some tightness. It's still there, but I would kind of push through it and running in the 200 because I could have been a world champion if I would have qualified for the relay in the 200. So I knew I had to run a pretty good time. It's on a bank track. I'm a bigger sprinter, like whatever, and I'm coming out of lane one, and my hamstring tightened up on me, and it finally is now loose. But what I was doing at the gym today, as I was jumping like up and down, like higher than I have in years. Like it just felt with no pain. You know what I mean? I just felt like I'm gonna be able to dunk soon. I'm 53. Like I feel like I mentioned before, my goal is to run the same times I ran in college. And I really feel that it's within reach. Like I don't think, and I know that coming from, if you would have told me this 5 years ago before I started this journey, there's no way I thought I would have been able to move anywhere near like I used to before. But like one of the great, so I had to create this story so I could make people aware of this. I had to push through and become great at these other things. But when I was tying my shoe the other day, I felt like, I was like, God, how nice is it to tie my shoe without negotiating with my body's pain to tie my shoe? Or take out the garbage because you're leaning over and then your entire back feels like it's on fire. So you're rushing everything because you're in this anxiety. You think you're being attacked. Your body thinks it is. And you rush things and things fall over and, you don't clean. It's the worst life living in chronic pain. And then to be able to just give someone not only an alternative outlook, but hope that it can get better. Maybe my system or toolbook doesn't have all the pieces for you, but it's a guideway into you finding maybe some things that do. But these are the most obvious things that you're going to want to start with.
You're absolutely right to support the system as far as the ingredients and flexibility feel. But what I try to tell people is, we have to get outside and play again. We have to, get back to playing tennis, or like in your case, you're competing on a national level. But if people can get back to enjoying the ability to play outside, to use the body as it was intended. Um,
Yeah, that's the rough thing about being in chronic pain is that you want to do that. So
mhm.
imagine like having a tiger in a straitjacket. Like that's what I felt like. I've got all this want to go be a normal person, all this energy or desire to go for a run, go for a bike ride. But if I do, or go play a softball game for 2 weeks, I'm just like everything hurts, every part of my body. It's affecting me mentally, spiritually, emotionally with my family. And so it's just this you kind of tug of war you have with yourself, and then you just kind of give up on movement altogether, and then that's probably worse than not moving at all and enduring the pain because now you're not because your fascia is made of collagen and it's moving with you on your input every moment of the day as example by the phone example, right? Or evidence by the phone example. That so when you're giving it action to move, it's telling those chemical bonds to not set in and stay pliable, right? When and to lengthen, right? And when you're giving it instructions through food items, you're either telling it to build itself correctly or forget about it, just go glue up my body, right? You've got two options. Those are the only two options. So it's needing your input and moving also initiates your mechanoreceptors to go to certain areas to fix things and repair things. So movement is really important and vital. But when you're in chronic pain, it's like, well, what do you do about it? Like, you need to move. And so with me, with my solution, it's like just slow stretching. Like well, I don't hardly lift weights at all. I hardly actually even train for my sprinting career.
Really?
Because I know what's going to happen, right? So thankfully I've given the God-given ability to, you know, move and be fast and whatever. But, you know, I would train before my events or I would, my first event where I won a national championship afterwards, my feet were super swollen. It was tough because I was still kind of halfway in between this whole to point where I'm at now. So the most important thing is making sure you have a good relationship with food so you don't have to put so much time into the gym. And then when you get to the gym or do whatever you're going to do, it's foam rolling, it's getting on the spinning bike a little bit, maybe doing a Tabata exercise, high, fat loss, low, output type of event in terms of, for pain. Stretching. Like I use the equipment in the gym as like almost like somebody would in like bar or like whatever those, where they're twisting and turning and using
Mhm.
weights and twisting because the weight momentum is now going to move me past some areas where my muscle ability can't. Because let's say I just want to twist over here to stretch this out. Well, if this is all jammed up like a doorstop and it's all gunky, like think of an accordion, well, I can't get over there to stretch this out. But this is stretchable. I can feel that it wants to be loosened up, but this is so tight that I can't take the movement. But if I throw a weight down here and just kind of, it'll pull me down on momentum and kind of help this, kind of, you'll hear it crack up and come apart. And you start to get blood flow back in that area. Because when this fibrosis and collagen matrix and that inflammation cycle binds up, blood can't pass through. So you're starving these muscles of blood and they become so tight and tense that, you might think they're ligaments and tendons, but it's just really bad, crunchy muscle.
Wow, it harkens me back to the Wizard of Oz with the Tin Man and the uh, lack of movement, the lack of oil,
Yeah.
that it almost starts to freeze and lock up, almost like the human body is similar in that regard when it comes to not exercising, but not releasing, and it almost seems like it all ties back to collagen and it ties back to the fascia,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's breaking the bonds.
Yeah.
Um,
when I focus on these things, it's like it's inflammation, collagen, which is the fascia mainly, and oxidative stress. Like those are the three major ones that I think we're all going through,
Mhm.
right? And then the other ones, the oxalates, well, you might not have been juicing spinach, right? Biofilms is another one, or oxidation. Maybe you're not eating things high in phosphorus, but you just kind of considering all options, trying to consider ways to remove them naturally, see if it works for you, right? And then if you have to go get a knee replacement, because I needed 4 joint replacements according to Rothman Institute. And I also was diagnosed with spina bifida occulta, which, we're going to talk about folic acid later. We'll talk about spina bifida occulta. But I was diagnosed with that, which I think is a misdiagnosis. They're looking under imaging saying I fused these bones together, but it's also a birth defect. I'm like, well, what is it? Did it fuse together or did it happen at birth? But what I really think is happening is you have so much collagen buildup and it's pulling all of your stuff together. It's right there on top of one another. So when you loosen all that junk up and get rid of that collagen, because collagen and bone are the same thing, right? Just an abundance of collagen with more calcium, but type 1 collagen makes up bone. And so these diagnoses, and like 20% of medical diagnoses are incorrect anyway. And like how many of those people didn't question their diagnosis and just
Yes.
accepted it? Like
Yes.
ankylosing spondylitis is the most, I don't want to, anyone that's got it, I have sympathy for you, but you're being gaslit. It's just arthritis of the back. Okay. It's ankylosing, which they say is calcium buildup. So that could be calcification, but that's in a separate event. Spondylitis is inflammation of the spine. So they're saying you have some calcification here and some inflammation here. Well, how do we get rid of the inflammation? Because you're going to get fibromyalgia eventually. It's just started here, and this is where you've complained about it. But now you get this diagnosis, and that is who you are now. And then you get on TikTok, and you're an ankylosing spondylitis warrior, and blah, 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 and you're perpetuating this idea that chronic pain is just this natural thing that we're all should be going through, and we're all going to kind of end up in these buckets at some point. And it's like, no, all these things are the same things that are happening with a whole bunch of different names in the body. And when you start unwinding these things, you realize how simple the whole thing actually is, right? It's just stopping things. Stop eating manufactured food. Stop eating seed oils. Stop doing this. But that's great if you're not already in fibromyalgia, chronic pain, but you have to intentionally find ways to break those things down. But if you're a parent, you can teach your child now so they don't get to the point where they have to break it down, right? Because things like juvenile arthritis are massively on the rise. So this idea that arthritis was an old person's disease is not true. So then what are we doing to our bodies? What are we doing to our children's bodies that's causing arthritis in them? And it's really, you look at manufactured foods first.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of you have to pause and pulse when it comes to your diet. And one of the ways to pause is through like a 3-day or a 4-day fast
Yeah.
to allow the body itself to detox. Is that something that you incorporate in your protocol?
Yeah, fasting is definitely in there. So the girl who told me about castor oil, good friend of mine, we're kind of on our
Uh-huh.
healing journeys together. She challenged me to do a 3-day fast because there was this guy called the snake diet. I don't know if you've seen this guy. Have you
Uh-uh.
seen him? He's
No.
wild. He's crazy. He's Canadian. He's big dude. He's kind of a meathead kind of guy. And he starts all of his YouTube videos off very low production. Hey, fatty. So he's like, get your attention by calling you fat. So I was like, hey, what's this guy talking about? And so he was doing these extended fasts, or he's doing all these kind of crazy things. But he created this thing called the snake juice diet. And it's basically you're using potassium and salt, or like no salt, which is potassium, and water, and doing these water fasts. So you're replenishing with electrolytes. And so she said, do a 3-day fast. And I was like, all right, I'll do a 3-day fast. And so day 2, I'm just like, click, 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 click. I was like, holy cow, what just happened to my back? Well, those enzymes. So let me tell you about the inflammation cycle. I think this is the thing that I think we should all understand as well, because this is where this idea our body is attacking itself is not true. So once it starts at the cell wall, we talked about that ratio of omega 3s to omega 6s. Then it activates the cytokines, right? And then they sort of recruit the C-reactive proteins. They're tagging the invader so the white blood cells can come and attack it. They're going to eat it, send off lymph, and then the glue is there to sequester the blood or the invader, like whatever it is, the gluten, whatever's causing the inflammation is trying to stabilize that. And then it turns into a clot, which is a fibrin, which they're going to tell you is like a scar. It's not a scar, it's a scab. It's just internal. Same thing as a scab on your finger. And then collagen is going to weave its way in there. And your collagen's not built correctly, right? And so now this bad collagen is going to just dump glue in here. And then the white blood cells retreat, the red blood cells come back in. And hopefully this isn't so damaged that the red blood cells can get back in there and keep the muscles healthy, right? But that mesh gets so fine. Then at 20 hours of fasting, your body says, hey, you haven't fed us for a while. I'm going to release the enzymes that are normally going to digest your food into your bloodstream to then go find these proteins, the fiber and the collagen, and cleave them. And then the body can start slowly taking them down, right? And so that's the entire cycle as it completes. That last part of the piece, when's the last time 90% of Americans have fasted for 20 hours? Probably never in their entire life unless they were sick, right?
Sure.
And so it's this, once again, this spiritual biblical thing that is like, I look at the Bible, and I'm really into the Ethiopian Bible, by the way, because of all the healing books that are in there. I was like, hey, if there's all this healing in the Bible, what else is in there? Like there's some really interesting thing about we have the same amount of DNA as an olive tree, and there's some fascinating stuff in there. Anyway, so fasting is like really important for your health. And then at 96, so at 20 hours is that part happens, but at 96 plus hours of fasting is super important as well. You have all these old inefficient cells everywhere in the body. And because they're old, they can't do their job efficiently. And many of them are leaking cytokines, which causes inflammation, right? At 96 plus hours, they're told to go die. And then new, healthier cells come back in. So that's where I got to this past week. And I went to 98 hours, 97 hours. I did one or two extra hours after the 96. And I should have slept that night and, got to the morning. But, so I was able to clean out some of the old cells that might be working against me rather than completely for me.
Wow, that's impressive. One of the things I always tell people is after 36 hours, it starts the stem cell production in the GI tract. And one of the things that I do is I'll drink green tea, just copious, like throughout the fast, because green tea will help suppress the appetite. But I think another point, if people are going to attempt the fast, is something that you alluded to or we talked about, is you have a support group.
Yeah.
So you have a group of people that you can connect with that are doing the fast itself. So
Yeah.
how's that helped?
Yeah, so there are apps as well where you can connect with people and kind of create groups on the apps. But the apps are very visual and telling you where you're at in your process, which helps
Okay.
as well, because you're like, all right, here's that next part, just 3 hours away. I'm gonna hold out for it. But I have a group of guys in WhatsApp, some like really cool dudes, like all American lacrosse players, grandsons of professional football team owners, and other podcasters. You can join complete, like we'd love to have you. And really, really cool guys who motivate one another and kind of keep each other compliant within our little, because, and I don't lie in there. It's like my buddy's like, hey Espo, did you, and I want to tell him I got to the morning, but I was like, I can't lie. I got to 1 extra hour because I wanted to beat him and stay into that, cell clearing space. But it's a good time. It makes things easier. Listen, the first day of the fast is tough. Day 1.5 can be tough. Your body goes through a shift that you're going to think are hunger pains. It's not hunger pains. It's happening when you're hungry. It doesn't mean you're hungry. Your body's going through this shift of using glycogen for fuel sources into fat for its fuel source. And then your brain runs on fuel much more efficiently. And that's like, I don't know if you've ever talked about statins on your show, but I'm completely anti-statin. It basically forces glucose for energy into your brain. It's getting rid of the cholesterol in your brain. It's lowering your cholesterol totally. And your body has a natural way of regulating your cholesterol with enzymes based on your body's need. So if you need higher cholesterol for some purpose, well, you've taken this medication that's sort of stopping that. Plus, they calcify the plaque in the arteries. And of course, the pharmaceutical companies will come out with studies telling you that's beneficial, but that's not beneficial. So an interesting thing is when I took the pineapple powder for the first time, it was, I had missed probably 2 dentist appointments because of COVID. And so I had a piece of plaque come out of my teeth, and I have no cavities. I'm 53, I've got no cavities, but my father has all like false teeth. And so I was like, "Oh no, has it hit me? Are my teeth falling apart?" It turned out it was just a big piece of plaque, which is gross. But I went to the dentist, and it was a couple days before Christmas, and she's like, "Yeah, we got to do a deep cleaning. It's going to cost you $1,000." And I'm like, "Oh man." She goes, "Oh, it's going to be really bad. Your teeth can fall out." And of course, and I'm like, "All right, let's do it." And I'm like, "What am I doing? I'm a fraud." Like I'm telling everyone to advocate for their own. I've not researched this at all. I haven't looked into this one bit. I even asked her. I said, "Isn't there like something you can spray on my teeth, and I can come back in a week or two?" Or a couple days later, and it'll be easier for you to, nope, nothing we can do. I was like,
Okay.
that doesn't sound right. And then so I said, hold on, when the tech came in, I said, and I wrote National Institute of Health, proteolytic enzymes, which is my pineapple powder,
Okay.
National Institute of Health, proteolytic enzymes, dental plaque. 30 studies pop up on how effective it is. So because I had started taking the pineapple powder or the pineapple powder in my supplement, it was breaking down the plaque in my mouth. So honey does that really effectively as well as those enzymes in there. So assuming that will also help with the plaque in the arteries as well. So, and the other thing, just get on the statin thing. If you are on statins, you are going to eventually get dementia. There's a 2015 study that showed that if you're on statins for 5 years, you're going to get 3 days of life, 3 extra days of life. That's all. And what's the other thing? I mean, they're just basically limiting your cholesterol, and that's not good. I mean, doctors are wrong there. Yeah.
One of the things, and I highly recommend people to check out your course for the Undo Playbook, which goes through all the topics that we talked about. One of the things I wanted to also mention when it comes to fasting, which I just recently started doing, is cold therapy, doing cold plunging itself. Because alluding to the story that you mentioned, I went into the doctor's office and got my testosterone tested, and I was down around 49 total testosterone. And then I asked, what kind of solution is there for guys to boost their testosterone naturally? One of the things that she only recommended was testosterone replacement. And I said, well, no, there's got to be other solutions, kind of like the deeper dive that you took.
Yeah.
And that got me into looking to cold immersions and cold therapy. So I set up a cold plunge in my bathroom by using an aquarium cold plunge chiller, running the hoses into the bathtub, and I now have cold water 50 degrees at
Wow.
any time that I want to plunge.
What
But
what what did that setup end up costing you?
it was just like $500, but
Okay.
you can get a cold plunge chiller like on Facebook Marketplace for like 250.
Yeah, no,
But
I've seen. I didn't know if you had like a hack, like a really cheap hack that way. I thought you were.
oh, the other thing you have to do is put a canopy bathtub filter on the nozzle itself to reduce the chlorine and the other toxins from filling up the bathtub. But here's the results. I went from free testosterone of 49 all the way up in 6 months from doing cold plunges up to 685.
Wow.
And
Did you notice it as well? How did you like vitality feel?
okay, for anybody and for yourself that is watching, the number one thing that changed, and I was shocked because I'm a veteran and I had to do shift work continuously, is I've had to deal with years of insomnia. And now is the first time that I've been able to sleep, and I mean solid sleep. I
Wow,
mean,
yeah,
I'm absolutely knocked out. And my goal, because when I went back to the doctor and they got the results and they walked in the room, is it's kind of like, what the hell are you doing?
right,
Like,
right.
what did you do? And I explained to them, as far as the protocol that I implemented, but my goal is to see if I could take it up to 1,000.
Wow.
So to continue that increase. But I believe that, like, in your playbook course, which, like, again, I highly recommend it, but you recommend and suggest cold therapy as far as the
So yeah, so I look at heat and cold together. So once again, as we're looking at those, chemical bonds, the
Mhm,
cold does not have as profound an effect as heat does. It
mhm,
still does have an effect. So it's like if you want to do cold plunge and cryotherapy for other purposes, you're going to get that added benefit of helping break down those chemical bonds. Heat is much, much more effective at, I think it's 120 plus degrees is
mhm.
when you start breaking down that fibrin, that inflammation response. And actually, the studies show that the proteolytic enzymes work more efficiently in heat. So, I was telling my buddy today, I'm like, do me a favor. I said, go drink my supplement because he doesn't take it, he takes it sporadically. And you got to take it, continuously to start really seeing the results. And
Oh,
so I said, "Dude," I said, "Drink my supplement, go into the sauna for 20 minutes and breathe deeply for your nose at least 11 times, right? And then see if you start getting some shift there because it's amazing with just that little combination therapy is going to do because what's it doing is it's helping, deliver blood throughout the body. It's making the enzymes more
mm.
effective. The heat is doing what it's doing. It's also thinning out the blood so the blood can move more freely. You're breathing through your nose, so you're slowing down the fibrosis events. And it just becomes this really great way of taking just 15 minutes out of your day to shift something. Like if those 15 minutes, if you do that, like that makes a massive improvement. Now, I also like to do that therapy when I'm grounded on the earth, go out by the river, sit by the earth. Sometimes I might eat a magic mushroom and just sit there. And there's a star that I meditate to. It's called Arcturus.
Okay.
100% has given me information. I've downloaded information from
Uh-huh.
that guy before.
Mhm.
The stars are made of plasma as well.
Right.
Our blood has plasma in it. So, there's a connection. But yeah. And so you just, when you're grounding on the ground, you're getting all those free electrons coming up and pairing all those free radicals, stabilizing that environment. All those electrons are surrounding your blood cells, causing them to bounce off of one another. So your blood's flowing more efficiently. So, take your flexibility fuel, get that breathing down, and either go into heat or grounding, earthing, and you're going to have such a profound impact on,
Ah.
just flexibility.
It's almost like a biohack to amplify the effects, almost like a catalyst going into a sauna for about 20 minutes to help that the enzymes themselves help to
Yeah,
reduce inflammation. And of course, you're going to be detoxing, heavy metals and other things just
yeah.
from the use of the sauna.
Mhm.
But that's great information as far as
Yeah, another thing I think everybody should try is do a glutathione drip with hyperbaric oxygen chamber. Now, this is somebody's got
Ah.
the money to do it. The alternative is to kind of do these other things I was talking about. But if you can go in and do a glutathione drip, that's the master antioxidant, right?
Okay.
Oxidative stress is something we're all dealing with. And then when you go directly into the oxygen chamber, and I do it at this place called Restore, you're now able to move that glutathione through tissue that you were not able to get it to
Mm.
before because those oxygen molecules get compressed you're absorbing 100% of the oxygen that you're breathing in, while we're only absorbing 30% of it when we breathe normally. And then, I mean, layers, for me at least, and other people that I've worked with, just start peeling apart while you're in the machine. You just start stretching, and all this stuff starts cracking and clicking. And it's one of them. And the worst part about it is I mean, you move forward so much, but you have a little bit of a refraction after it. So you're like, all right, I got to go do this again, because you know it's moving you forward, but you feel so good in that moment of that 24-hour period after you've done it, that you kind of wish you lived in that body like your whole life. But one of my next big investment is either going to be a sauna or hyperbaric oxygen therapy. But hyperbaric oxygen is massively important, and it's surprising to me that the Phillies, I'm here in Philadelphia, just incorporated into their training just this year. I'm like, God, this has been out forever. Like, who are your people that are working with you? Oxygen is the key to long life. Oxygenated tissue.
Absolutely. It alters the gut microbiome by using the hyperbaric oxygen chamber. But the biggest benefit that I've seen, and it goes back to like continuous use, is it dramatically increases collagen production. And that's one of the things that decline as you get older.
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing, though. Do you want that collagen production to be dramatically introduced improved if you don't have the right ingredients?
True.
So if you're gonna do the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, you better make sure you've got your 4 amino acids and 4 cofactors. So when you build that collagen, it's being built there in the way that you're supposed to have it built, rather than literally it's glue. Like, I've been in here with so many acupuncture needles that I feel exactly what's happening, and I feel the response that happens when it goes away instantaneously. Like, I was like, it just goes away. Here's another interesting thing. So if you are in an inflamed state and you're taking hyaluronic acid, it will turn to glue.
What?
Yeah, research that one. It's high molecular weight hyaluronic acid. There's also low molecular weight hyaluronic acid, not as susceptible as the high weight, but the high weight stuff, which is in most of the supplements that most people are going to buy because it's a little cheaper. If you're in an inflamed state, it will turn that into glue. And so instead of being hyaluronic acid, so it's basically allowing things to move more smoothly, it's binding you up.
I know it's incredibly popular when it comes to facial skin products themselves
Yeah.
But I never knew that about
Yeah.
hyaluronic
Yeah,
acid.
my partner, she's an esthetician, so by
Oh.
trade, so she's really into collagen and all that kind of good stuff, and she works for this device company that uses ultrasound. It's called Glow 2 Facial, and it uses ultrasound to help to promote collagen synthesis in the face. I've had her, hey, do my shoulder, see if it works there. And but it's interesting. It's like micro needling, but without the inflammation response. So you get just that collagen response. So it's like a non-invasive way of helping the skin stay more youthful without having to stick needles in your face. Yeah, but it's energy, and it's so weird how it's all come together. She works for that company. It's energy, it's collagen, and that's sort of like where my whole life is going. It's weird synergy, or what's that word that people use? I can't remember, but when things kind of come together.
Well, yes, everything in the universe and inside the body is energy at a particular frequency. And I've measured, and there are ways that you can measure through the Zyto hand cradle, where you can measure the vibrational frequency of the joints, the muscle, the all the tissues within the body itself, and basically everything in the body has a frequency that is in resonance or out of resonance.
What is that tool?
Okay, there's a couple devices. One is the Zyto, ZYTO, and it uses galvanic sensor that you place your hand on. And when I used it and measured it, it could tell that I had a mild herniated disc in the L5, L4 region before I even mentioned it to the technician. That it basically mapped out the entire body, but not only do the organs and tissue have particular frequencies, so does cancer, so does mold and microtoxins. So I did a separate vibrational energies scan that discovered in that told me that I had microtoxins, which I knew separately, independent through a test that I had done previously, living in a house where the hot water heater valve busted, and it created a black mold underneath the foundation. So
Oh, wow.
you're absolutely 100% right when it comes back to the frequency and energy. Not in the body itself has a whole vibrational frequency, and it's typically between 60 and 70 megahertz. Once you get below 57 megahertz, that's when chronic conditions can set in,
Yeah.
and or chronic conditions can actually decrease the body's vibrational energy.
Have you tried to put that against fabric? You know how we talked about before that fabric has frequency? I wonder if that would work.
It does. And
Yeah, do you
you're absolutely right. The thing that I tested was, you see, certain crystals like Herkimer diamonds, which are double pointed quartz crystals, have a higher piezo value. And piezo value is the ability to amplify energy. So I was wearing one of these lockets with Herkimer diamonds, and it amplified my brain frequency to a point, because I was wearing an EEG headset, that
yeah.
I had to take the Herkimer diamond pendant off to continue the training, because I was doing brain frequency training, trying to increase my brain waves to beta frequency. And I did that through navigating a course. One was a golf course, and then the other one was hot air balloons. So, in order to elevate the hot air balloons, I had to maintain a beta brainwave frequency. But
Interesting. That's
yeah,
really interesting. So, your fascia has a piezoelectric effect as well. So, and
yeah.
that's, they think it's related to consciousness and all that kind of stuff. So I need to learn about those diamonds. So that's
Oh,
really interesting to me.
yes. Not only that, something else to look into is the body can produce biophotons, and the body itself is bioluminescent. So the energy that it produces, you can image that, the amount of bioluminescence or biophoton production. So not only can you see it, like in the chemical process, you can scan it. And
Yeah.
but anyways, yeah.
That's interesting. I wanna look into that fabric thing and then just to see if I can, because 'cause I've always been curious if it measures frequency of fabrics, that there's some fabrics that I don't know the frequency of, like bamboo and hemp and stuff like that, that
Ah,
I wanna, because I know, because silk, so a lot of women wear a silk scarf on their head. They
right.
think it's good for them. It's actually a much lower frequency, so it's causing oxidative stress. That's why you should be wearing a wool cap. Like every when I wear a wool cap, my hair health gets better because it's helping stabilize those free radicals in my head, right? 'Cause
Ah,
it's donating those electrons back. So I'll sleep with my wool cap or hang out at night with my wool
really?
cap on. And yeah, there's a lot of evidence if you look back in history that it's been used for health reasons. Wool, because men used to wear wool caps, all the time.
That's
Their
true.
wool hats, and yeah. So I was thinking, because I also believe in Tartaria and those kind of things. I don't know if you're familiar with that whole concept, but previous civilizations, but you
Yes.
would see all these men wearing, wool suits and wool hats, and what you don't realize is that they're probably vibing real high because they're getting real good energy against their skin.
I would think if you combine that with like grounding sheets, and then using a wool hat, that's gotta have
Yeah. So let me tell you my grounding sheet experience because it's a
oh,
good one. So I have fitted grounding sheets on my bed now. And so, once I started grounding, I was like, well, this is like you feel grounding like immediately if you're listening. Like if you put your feet on the ground and you take a few breaths in, you're like, something's going on here. And I put the science behind it, but you feel it, like the feeling you can't deny. So I bought a grounding sheet and I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. So I went on Amazon and bought the cheap one and it moved around the bed a lot because it wasn't fitted. And then the cord broke. I was like, forget it. And I threw it away and I was like, that experiment's over. I couldn't sleep for the next 3 days. And so I went and I bought another grounding sheet and Amazon delivered it, put it on, zonked right out. Like, yeah, like immediately. And I think a lot of reason why people are having sleeping problems these days is you just blame it on all this stuff, but your bed is made of polyester and stealing electrons from you all the time,
yes.
creating free radicals in your body as you sleep. Our pillows, which we're putting our head on, is this memory foam junk, right? And it's sapping electrons from our brain, creating noise in our brain. And so, everybody blames our health on poor sleep. It's our health is giving us poor sleep. I
That's
don't think the reason for poor health is because naturally our body wants to go to sleep.
right.
It's like, so
Right.
it's the poor health that's keeping us awake.
You're 100% right, because that's why when I was doing cold plunges, which the main mechanism for increasing hormone production, not only for men and women, is because it increases brown fat. Brown fat is
Yeah.
the main source of mitochondria.
Yes.
Mitochondria signal the production of hormones,
You
but
yeah.
you're yeah. I
You just
noticed
reminded me of a subject that I knew I wanted to research more, and I've completely forgot about it until now, and it's brown fat. So, thank you for bringing that up because I know that's a really interesting subject to look at.
it's a game changer. And if you think about it, because children start out with the largest percentage of brown fat, and they'll fall asleep in the back of a car, they'll fall asleep, you know, anywhere. All of a
Yeah,
sudden they pass out. And as we get older and we get more used to just the temperature inside of buildings itself, we reduce brown fat. But if you do cold plunge, or if you're in Philadelphia, even once you start to build the brown fat, you'll notice if you go outside and it's cold at night, just walking to the gym, walking out of the gym, just with the t-shirt, it feels good.
yeah.
And if you do walk outside, or if you are outside and the temperature is around 30 or 35 degrees, that's equivalent to cold therapy or a cold plunge.
How long do you need to be exposed to that temperature for it to have an effect? Because something that I do at the end of every shower is complete cold on my head. Well, I do a deep breath in, a deep breath out, on my chest with a deep breath in, deep breath out, then on my belly, deep breath in, deep. And it's short, but I want to get my body temperature lowered so then it works to bring it back to warmth and kind of help with fat burning and things like that. But how are some other ways that you can build brown fat other than cold exposure? What's the minimum cold exposure?
Um, the specific source of increasing brown fat adipose tissue is through cold therapy, uh, cold plunging itself. What I do, and you see, each individual is completely different. What I did from dramatically increasing my testosterone about 1200% was my protocol. I was doing 10 minutes per day at 50 degrees of water temperature. So I would sit in for 10 minutes. The other thing that it does, besides dramatically increasing mitochondria, is that it will increase dopamine. So as soon as you jump out of a cold plunge, you'll feel fantastic. And
Yeah.
the other thing is, this is normal over in Northern Europe. like in Norway and other countries, because they were literally set their babies outside in a stroller and then go into the restaurant and eat. So after they get done eating, they'll come outside and then they'll take their child, and it's tradition. I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah.
where it comes from, but because of, babies have the largest, highest amount of brown fat for insulation, but that's something to look into. But
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting because I definitely want to increase my dopamine because dopamine is not really your reward center, it's your motivation, s- right? Center. And so as I get older, I find it harder and harder to, because I know I should be making like social media videos and stuff like that. But as I get older, I'm just like, I'm not interested in making videos like that. I don't want, and I know that there's something that's just not, and when it's winter time up here and I feel like I'm in hibernation anyway, but I really the first thing I'm gonna do after we're off here is I'm gonna go do a cold plunge in my tub. So I'll throw a bucket of ice in there. But yeah, that's an interesting thing because dopamine is definitely I think something I need to.
it's instant to where, like, you will notice it.
Yeah.
Um,
I've
but
done them before. Like that's where I met
okay.
the horse jockey. We were in the cold plunge together in this gym down in Florida, and I've done them in the
Ah.
tub every once in a while, but I need to bite the bullet and get into it a little more. I hate the
It
cold. I'm from Florida originally, man. Like, I'm like, yeah, I like sunlight.
One thing to mention, if you do start to incorporate it into your daily routine, is to do it before your workout, not after your workout. Um, the dramatic increase in hormone production um occurs, and you'll get a better workout if you do it prior. And if you do work out, you need to wait at least 3 hours, because there's um vasorestriction in your blood vessels when you do a cold plunge,
Okay.
because yeah, yeah. Well, where can people find out more about flexibility fuel and the course that you have that I
Yeah.
highly recommend, which is a
So we
4.
we didn't get to folic acid today, but let's talk again because I want to talk about
Okay.
folic acid and cancer and anxiety and this mess of folic acid in the world. But it's another one of those hidden helpful things that is actually destroying us. So make sure people subscribe to watch our next video. So, but undo.me,
Okay.
www.undo.me, is where you can find the playbook and the supplement. So you just click on playbook and it'll take you to another platform where the playbook is hosted. It's also set up to be a community. So if people want to interact with other people, ask me questions there. I'll, on post questions and stuff there. I've recently uploaded it's a free membership there, and then you pay for the program. It's either $13.96 a month, and then you can literally, if you watch it for 1 month, you're going to be good. You don't have to renew. I make it really accessible to everybody. Or if you want to buy it for $196, and then you own it forever in every update that I make to it. Plus, you get a bottle of flexibility fuel
Wow.
with that. Yeah, so it's a pretty good deal. But I've got on there for free, like I've created the world's greatest shopping list because we talk about those 4 categories of things that you need, minerals, fats, amino acids, and nutrients. And then I've mapped them all out on a spreadsheet in categories of animal products, vegetables, fruits, nuts, legumes, whatever, and where you can get the most bioavailable version of that particular nutrient, right? And then when you look at this free spreadsheet that I put out there, you're going to realize how malnourished you actually are because you're going to see that most of this stuff, like if you want like the daily recommended allowance of something that's going to come from spinach, like iron, you're going to need like 16 cups of iron of spinach, right? Which nobody, you know what I mean? So it's just not practical when we think that all these superfoods, these, health foods, the nutrients aren't bioavailable to us and we have to work our way around the plant defense chemicals. So there's no plant defense chemicals in meat, liver, kidney. That's on the outside of the animal. right? And so that's why liver is really, if you want to talk about one superfood, it's liver, and you'll see it on my spreadsheet. It's the number one thing in almost every essential amino acid and most of your B vitamins. So, and you only need a little bit of it. And so I've got friends who hunt. I get free liver, I get free heart, I get free kidney. And so, you can really, whatever, apportion these things. You don't have to eat much to get it. And once again, if you look at food as nutrient rather than, it's just something to play with, then you make more, just make better food choices. And I put together some meal plans there. Gonna have some workout plans, all free stuff. But what I'm then eventually going to do is create group coaching. So, if you wanted to coach with me one-on-one, it's pretty expensive. It's like, $1,100 for a 3-month coaching course with me. But this way it's, you get into a group of people, and on a monthly basis or weekly basis, we're all going to sit down, and it costs like $9.99 to like $59.99 a month based on, how many people are in those groups. But it really, and then it gives you access to the Undo Method playbook if you want to buy it. And I honestly think it's the most comprehensive tool out there to understand and be educated, and to be given the tools to make the appropriate actions for what's causing chronic pain, stiffness, inflexibility. Once again, I'm not claiming it's a cure. There are probably other things that can be added, or maybe, in conjunction with what's going there, but everything there is natural and based in science. Nothing in there is like, well, my grandmother told me I should hug a tree. Well, I'm going to go hug the tree, and then I'm going to tell you what the science is behind it. So you are intentional about making that choice. You're intentional about breathing through your nose. You're intentional about taking your shoes off when your kid's at the park so you can put your feet on the ground. It just gives you little bits of tools to get your body set up for a much, like, in homeostasis. So it's in a healing environment.
Yeah.
The supplement, just real quick, the supplement, if you use the code FLEX, you'll get a discount on it. So it's a discount by using the term FLEX. It should keep it under $50, like around $49 with taxes and shipping and all that stuff. If you go to buy another essential amino acid supplement anywhere, you're probably in the 60+ range anyway.
Sure.
So you're getting the essential amino acids with these powerful compounds. They're going to help the body stop chronic pain, give you better joint, health, all that kind of stuff.
Excellent. I'll post the links to the website, but I'll also include in the description the code FLEX. And I'm sure people could also find you on Instagram when you're doing the different track meets and other coming up.
Undo Method, UNDUMETHOD. That's all my socials. So Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, all that stuff is basically /Undo Method with a U at the end of undo. But it's pretty. So my Instagram has more of my journey. TikTok I use more for like, hey, don't eat this thing. But it's cool to go back on my Instagram, and you can see where my face was so fat. You can see where my body was all mangled and twisted, where I looked like this giant mountain man, and it's a pretty interesting look into the journey. A couple of my track meets I think are posted on there.
Excellent. So I'll post the information, and perhaps next time we'll do a deeper dive into folic acid, or we'll also look at different types of fabric and how it could impact one's health. We could also do a deeper dive into like fasting to let people know how to start from the beginning of the fast to be successful for a 3 or 4 day fast. So we can break down some of the chapters or some of the information from the playbook course, which
that'd be great. Absolutely. Cool. Well, I really appreciate the time. I can't wait to talk more. If anybody wants to reach out to me, please join that community, or find me on social media. But I'm going to be much more responsive in that community. Any question that I can get to, I'm going to. I'm not. It's really important for me that people question me, have questions for me, dispute their whatever it is. Give me that question so I can shed some light on it. Take that information and then go research it. right? And so you can see if I'm on board or not, because the information we're getting in this modern medical system is not good information. The information
Yes.
we get from influencers is often fragmented, right?
Yes.
And it's this piece and this piece and this piece and this piece. If you're really looking for something that's comprehensive and doesn't give you false hope and is rooted in science, I want to talk to you. Yeah.
And it's the foundation of, where to start from when it as far as the course itself. So
Yeah.
um yeah, thank you for joining today's podcast. This
Yeah,
is
this was a great talk. I really enjoyed it. You're extremely interested in the topic, and I love talking to people who have an interest and some experience with it, because we can really kind of get into the right questions.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
I hope people like, share, and spread this as much as possible. I'll post some of the reels on Instagram, and we'll push the content out. But yeah, I wanted to thank you again. But yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate it.